How do you see the future of open government from your perspective?
Open government is an opportunity for us to extend those capabilities and to more efficiently and effectively connect with today's constituents and constituents of the future.
I think the future of open government is more collaboration online, not only pushing out information in English for an audience overseas, but to actually engage people one-on-one in online discussions in language, in French, in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese.
Good afternoon. I'm Keith Moore here at Open Government TV, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, with our distinguished panel, we have Mr. Chris Ham. Chris Ham is from the General Service Administration, Federal Systems Integration and Management Center. He's the Operations Director. The FedSIM acronym for which provides project and acquisition financial management services to the federal government. And we also have Mr. Thomas Reed, Director of Office of Communications Business Opportunities from the FCC. Very happy to have both of you gentlemen here today. And as you know, at the Department of Transportation all day we've been talking about Open Government Directive. You all are very engaged and involved in that conversation. We want this discussion to be a lively one, and there will be some questions that will come from our audience. But first I'd like to start with you, Chris, and just tell us about Open Government Directive and your pilot project at GSA and what your goals are for that pilot project.
Sure, thank you. One of the first projects that GSA was working on was a project called Better Buy. The URL is betterbuyproject.org. It's a collaboration project between the National Association for Public Administration, the American Council for Technology, Interagency Advisory Council, Industry Advisory Council, and then GSA. So this thing kind of sprung up using different collaboration tools that are out there just around the community, like things like GovLoop. Ideas started to percolate around about how do we use social media, how do we become more transparent, how do we implement something. And right around the same time is when the Open Government Initiative came out, the directive came out. So the two align almost word for word. I mean, everything that we're trying to apply to acquisition is exactly what was in the Open Government Directive. So what we have is a website that says, okay, anybody in the world, not just the industry around the Beltway, not anywhere, not specific people, but anybody, put your ideas out there. How do we improve what we're going to buy? How do we identify what we're going to buy? How do we create a better way of communicating between industry and government? Because sometimes there are major walls and bureaucracy that prohibit that. How do we interact with small business? How do we use wiki software? How do we use Twitter to update status? All of the little questions about how we would actually perform the openness, all of that is being put out on this website, Better Buy Project, and then GSA is going to take all the results and actually conduct a procurement using all of the new tools.
Chris, would you say that this pilot project was generated by the directive itself, or was it something that was identified within the agency as an acquisition strategy difficulty within the marketplace that caused the development of the pilot project?
I think it's pure timing. The new administration clearly has been moving towards openness and transparency before there was the actual initiative. I mean, the idea of data.gov and recovery.gov, all of a sudden public-facing websites, the collaboration project, things where we're getting direct interaction with citizens, with industry. The same idea started to percolate around GSA at the same time, that this is coming, so we need to possibly change some of our default positions. Right now, acquisition is a very formal, very fair, very structured process, but it's not very open. It's not very transparent. So we have, in some ways, moved towards a bias towards fairness to all and structure to all, but actually driving towards communicating with all, letting everybody know what we're buying. So trying to even the scale a little bit between the concepts, opening up the door a little bit, could yield in much more brighter solutions, more innovation. So we saw an example of Defense Solutions go out and open up a website and ask for ideas, and immediately there was a torrent of new ideas on how to make changes, so we wanted to emulate some of their success.
Well, Thomas, we've had a chance to talk before and talk specifically about contracting with small businesses in particular.
Sure.
The Better Buy project, is this something that FCC, for example, or you yourself have actually heard of?
Well, no, this is a first. I mean, I think we have, as you know, we have our procurement office. And as Chris indicated, the FCC is also engaged in its own measures to increase transparency and engagement and participation. Our procurement office the process is laid out on our website for vendors that wish to deal with the FCC directly. And that is an open process. Of course, it's not as open as we would like. And so we are laboring to make sure that, consistent with this directive, consistent with the chairman's ideas and thoughts around openness and government at the FCC, that we're doing more to open up that process, the procurement process through the FCC. Some of the things, though, I think, if I can, I'll speak to how the FCC, post the directive and even before, has been engaging in new initiatives around openness in government. One of those is reboot.gov. Obviously the FCC is a regulatory agency, and what we are trying to do through Reboot, which is a new site, is to make the office more user-friendly in the virtual setting, so that we get more engagement by all citizens in our decision-making process. So that is up and running, and that effort began even before the announcement of the directive, long before. As a matter of fact, Steve Van Rokel, who's the managing director at the FCC, was brought on board several months ago, and he is one of the principals at the agency engaged on this issue, trying to use technology to open up our policy and regulatory making process. My office, OCBO, which is a policy office, is also engaged in that process. We're doing it, I call it the low-tech, old-fashioned way. We've got human beings that are there and available to our constituents to make sure that their voice is heard in the decision-making process. So there's information that we disseminate that impacts small and diverse businesses, where we feel that decisions or rules and policies that are coming out of the agency impact those constituent groups. We want to make sure that they're aware of those and that they're able to comment through our office on how those items impact their competitive interests.
So with about a minute left before we go to a break, I'd like to ask both of you gentlemen, Chris, at GSA, what kind of budgetary dollars on the procurement side are we really talking about?
Split my answer into two different sections.
Okay.
One is, how much is my internal budget to do this? Zero. I don't have, the process for getting new funding for doing any initiative within the government, it's a long cycle for appropriations and approvals. So what I get to do is I get to reuse all of our existing investments. Anything that we've already stood up, like one of my other sister organizations already has a wiki page. Well, how can I convince them to let me use it for free? In terms of actual procurement dollars that'll go on contract,
Yes.
The very first project that we put out there will be measured in the tens of millions. And I think that once we get a couple of projects that are successful, success will start to bloom, and we'll see it regularly as part of a process for nearly the majority of what GSA is putting out.
Okay, real quick budget on the FCC.
Well, it's gonna be
Procurement dollars.
Procurement dollars. Well, if we're talking direct procurement dollars in terms of supplier diversity program, I know that in the last several years, the budget has been about $500 million.
Okay.
And that's just for vendors that are dealing directly with the FCC. If you're asking about procurement dollars, and I know I'll wrap up real quickly, if you're asking about procurement dollars for the reboot.gov, I don't know the answer to that question. Steve Van Rokel would.
Okay.
Good.
We are very glad that you all have joined us today, and we'll be returning in just a moment with Open Government TV. Okay. Got about 15 seconds.